Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday Live, not live. I'm pre-recording this to take some PTO this week. I wanted to talk to you about teams, building effective, high-performance teams. For the past 20 years, I've been partnering with organizations to help develop executive leadership and strong, healthy, high-performance teams. At Bridge Between, our tagline is connecting potential to performance. And I don't know any team, or any individual for that matter, who has ever demonstrated their full potential. So there's always a lot of work to do. And I use a lot of models, like the Center for Creative Leadership has all of these resources. This one's from Korn, Ferry. And many of you have heard of FYI, which is for your improvement. This is FYI for teams. And in here is a host of different models and resources, but I always come back to Pat Lencioni. Patrick Lencioni, who wrote dozens of books, many of which are in my bookshelf right here. And he wrote this book called, I'll pull it out, called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Have you read that one? Many of you have. It's pretty famous. This one, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And in this book, it's a leadership fable. It's a story about a team and a new leader and the challenges that they have. And he ultimately walks you through this framework, if you will. And in the back, he gives you all the goodies. And he's very, very generous with his information. I'm part of a cohort of facilitators who learn from Patrick Lencioni. And through the pandemic, he's been offering us trainings and resources. He's just an incredible person. And when you think about teams, it helps us to understand how strong is the team and where are the dysfunctions. So you could look at this as the 5 dysfunctions of a team as it's titled, or the 5 elements of highly effective teams when these things are working well. So the foundation of the structure is trust. So in dysfunction, it's the absence of trust. In a high performance team, it's the presence and the active, intentional deposits toward trust. Now, Pat Lencioni describes trust as the willingness to be vulnerable. And for those of you who have seen Brené Brown's The Power of Vulnerability, you know a lot about that topic. Really important insights there in her TED Talk, which I'll include in the show notes from today. So trust, the foundation of trust, the speed of trust, another great book. I mean, I could just sit here all night and pull my bookshelf apart, but The Speed of Trust is another great resource for you and your team to work through. Stephen M.R. Covey wrote this one, and a great resource. So trust being vulnerable, vulnerable being the willingness to be imperfect, to admit mistakes, to ask for help, to ask for forgiveness. So a step forward is to be more transparent, vulnerable, real, authentic with your team members. Tell them how you're really feeling. Tell them where you're struggling. Ask them for support. That will help to build trust. So when we are working on a team where we can be ourselves and express ourselves, then we're much more likely to engage in healthy debate. The absence of conflict is the second tier on the pyramid, or the fear of conflict. And the fear of conflict happens for many reasons. Some of that is our historical experience with conflict being negative. And for some of us, it's that we're not really willing to be totally honest and transparent with our team members. So we hold back our real feelings, thoughts, beliefs, and perspectives. And then decisions are made. And then in the hallway, we talk about how we disagree or how that's really not the right choice, or what if. Where the proper time to have that kind of a discussion would have been in the meeting. And if we had an amount of trust and transparency, then that conflict, healthy debate would have taken place. So that's another thing for us to be thinking about as we're looking at our own teams, is how hearty and lively are our meetings? Do they get heated? Do we feel comfortable voicing alternative points of view? Do we even take turns being the devil's advocate, for example, just to build that muscle? So having healthy debate is a component of a high performance team. And the fear of conflict keeps people quiet and unhappy. And then when we're quiet and unhappy and we haven't expressed our points of view, the next step in the pyramid here is the lack of commitment. The lack of commitment is due to the fact that we never really hashed out all of the choices, right? If there was options A, B, and C, and we had healthy debate and lively discussion, and we weren't afraid of conflict, each of us would have different opinions on those three options. And after a matter of time, either somebody would call a tie or the leader would say, okay, I've heard everybody's opinions and we're going to go with B. And then we leave the meeting and we're much more likely to get all in and committed to B because we had the chance to express our thoughts. So it's important that we have that engaged discussion so that when we walk out of the room, we are all on the same page, as cliche as that sounds. So that commitment, that awareness of what is our purpose and our goal, what is our thematic goal and our focus, leaving this meeting and going into this next quarter or this next month or even the next couple of years. What is that commitment? So when we have that clarity of commitment, including having team agreements, that's something very important for every team to have, is the rules of the road or a team charter or an understanding of what the expectations are of being a member of that team. Because it's very difficult to hold people accountable to expectations that have never been clarified. So when we're working through that commitment phase, it's also important to talk about how are we committing to each other? How are we going to communicate with each other and each other's teams? How late is too late? How much is too little? How do we want to engage in meetings? How frequently do we want to meet? How often should we meet one-on-one? How are we building relationships with each other? And how are we holding each other accountable? So this accountability, or the avoidance of accountability in a dysfunctional team, is when the peers are afraid or not willing and courageous to hold each other accountable, including accountable to the team agreements. So they continually go to the senior leader that they have in common and have that person referee the discussion and sometimes be the middle person. And it's just a very awkward and dysfunctional waste of time. If the team could be clear about what they're committed to and everybody go out there and be adults and willing to collaborate and courageous enough to hold each other accountable when someone falls short of following through on an agreed upon norm, rule, way of acting. So the avoidance of accountability can be identified by how transparent are you about calling people out on their stuff? How willing are you to give your peers feedback, positive and constructive? Like how often do you speak to your peer about how she or he is behaving, managing their challenges, especially now in COVID? How are they doing? Are you checking in with them? And if they have made promises and they've fallen short, how are you handling that? Are you going to your senior leader or are you going directly to that person? Because I don't know about you, but I would way prefer that somebody come directly to me if they've got an issue with something that I've done than go around me. Even talking to my peers would not be as appreciated as somebody having the courage to speak to me directly. And I try to practice what I preach and do that as well. So just challenge yourself this week. Is there someone who you need to have a candid, courageous, crucial conversation with this week about something related to accountability? And then the thing that I find so interesting with the teams that I work with, because there is an assessment associated with all of this, is that they take the assessment and very often, the assessment results come back red, yellow, or green. Red is this is an area that needs attention. This is not working. It is dysfunctional. Yellow is you're on the cusp. You're doing some things that would be elements of highly effective teams, and you're still demonstrating dysfunction. And then green is you're looking good, keep going, keep up the good work. Very often when I get the assessment results back for a survey like this, the top of the pyramid is green, and the top of the pyramid is results. In a dysfunctional team, it's inattention to results. It's not paying attention enough or focusing on the results. But when I notice that this is green and the rest of it is yellow and red, it just begs the question, if you're getting results with all of the dysfunction in these other areas, what is possible if we polished up, tightened up, and trimmed these other things? What if we had overt conversations to talk about how to strengthen in these other areas of weakness? Now, the tip of the pyramid isn't always green. Sometimes it's glaringly red because the dysfunction has taken over and the team is not achieving results. So where would you say your team's greatest opportunity is? Do you need to work on building trust? Do you need to have healthier debate? Do you need to be more clear about what you're collectively committed to? Do you need to courageously hold each other accountable and have candid conversations and offer each other insights and feedback? And do you need to focus on results, getting further along, making a greater impact? Most teams have a weakness in one of these 5 areas. I have never worked with a team that has a triangle of green, like a tree. So I think in introspection, for us to think about where do we need to strengthen and what part do we play as leaders and members of teams to be the difference that we want to see. Because you and your peers are the number one team. Your primary focus and prioritization ought to be your peers. That peer accountability, because all of you leaders at that level dramatically affect everybody else in the organization. So take a moment, think about where you're strong, and say, I want to compound that positivity. And where are you weak and how can you grow? Let me know how I can help. And here's to you and your team.